Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Breastival. I'm Nuala Toman, and tonight we are discussing perinatal mental health. I feel very privileged to host this session, and I just wanted to say that it is so important to talk about mental health challenges and to reach out when we need support and to support those around us and to raise awareness of services that work to protect and promote mental health and well-being. 1 in 5 women report experiencing mental health challenges during pregnancy or in the year after they have given birth. And many of these women face significant challenges in accessing statutory services. And that is why it is so important for us to have this conversation and to raise our voice for change. I'm so privileged tonight to be joined by such a wonderful panel. Here tonight with me is Lindsay Robinson, who is a mum and a maternal mental health advocate. Lindsay has worked tirelessly to raise awareness of perinatal mental health challenges. She works at the Mental Health Alliance and is the founder of the site Have You Seen That Girl, which is developed to offer support to parents. Also with us is Andrea Murtagh, who is a mum, a mental health advocate, and a meditation life coach. Andrea has both passion and expertise in employing writing and meditation to promote well-being. And also with us tonight is Louise Taylor, who is a mum, innovator, business owner, and founder of the Little Forget-Me-Nots Trust. Louise is advancing embroidery innovation to promote well-being. I hope tonight that this event is informal and engaging. Just to go through a kind of loose running order, we will hear from Lindsay, followed by Andrea, and then Louise. We will then have a discussion, and I would be really grateful if you could post questions and comments in the chat or raise your hand if you would like to contribute to the discussion. If you post the comment in the chat, I will ask you if you want to unmute and join the discussion. Please don't feel under any pressure to do it because I can also read your comment out. So without any further waiting, I'm going to hand over to Lindsay.
Hi everyone, I just want to begin by saying a huge thank you to the team at Breastival for having me. I think this is probably the first year I've been able to join simply because I'm usually on holiday at this time. So thank COVID for some things because I'm able to be here tonight. So thank you so much for asking me to come along. It's a real privilege to be here. And so as Nuala has already said, I am a mum to one little boy. He is called Ruben, and I like to think of him as 7, but he'll be 8 in September, so he'd rather I say he's almost 8. And we live in Belfast, and I am the founder of Have You Seen That Girl, which is all about raising awareness of maternal mental health and well-being, signposting parents to appropriate help and support, and also campaigning for better services. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about Have You Seen That Girl in a moment or two, but I thought it might help if I shared just a little bit of my personal experience of maternal mental illness, because sometimes hearing somebody else share their experience, you can have that like aha moment where something resonates or you realize actually I'm not alone or somebody else has been there. And that was very much part of my story and what helped me to recover. So I started Have You Seen That Girl in 2015, but my experience of mental illness began 2 years before that. So it started halfway through pregnancy. So I was pregnant in 2013, and about 5 or 6 months in, pregnancy was really difficult for us, and we had a lot of concerns and questions over the growth of our baby and the health of our baby, and a lot of concerns over my lack of showing that beautiful baby bump that I was honestly really looking forward to and very excited for. And so for me at that stage, pregnancy became a huge time of anxiety, of stress, of admittance to hospital, of emergency appointments, of scans, and just of constant questions over, is everything okay, or what does the future hold? And I didn't realize at that time, but what was happening then was I was starting to develop a mental illness. And it feels a bit strange saying it now, considering I spend my life working in maternal mental health, but I really didn't have that much of a clue about what maternal mental health was or what it meant before I became pregnant. I think I probably knew it was important to look after myself. I mean, I took the vitamins, and I read the books about, taking a bit of exercise and eating well, but I didn't realize how important it was to look after my mental health and well-being, and actually that could have an impact on my whole pregnancy, on my well-being, and just a life postnatally. So for me, when I gave birth to my little boy, having struggled, I guess, since about 5 months pregnant with an undiagnosed mental illness, I was hoping that that day would be the start of an exciting new adventure, that it would be sheer relief that our baby was born and we would at least know what the future held for us all. And yet for me, what happened when I had a C-section due to obviously complications, I looked at our little boy and I thought, oh, that's not my baby. Can't be my baby. I haven't even had a baby. And it sounds really strange, even as I say it, and I've said it I don't know how many times, it hurts me nearly to say it now, because obviously I've been through a lot of recovery, but in those moments, as I looked over that blue screen, and as my husband sat beside me in the theatre, obviously very excited, I can remember just this sense of complete detachment from the world around me, of a disbelief that my body belonged to me, that this life belonged to me, and that this baby belonged to me. And I'd love to be able to say that I quickly got help and support and that was knocked on the head and that changed. But for me at that point, my story was very different, because despite asking for help in the first 2 to 3 to 4 months, I didn't get any. So what happened for me was I went down a real spiral and I became really severely mentally ill with maternal mental illness, to the point where I could barely function to the day, and I genuinely wanted to give up on life altogether. And it was a wonderful GP who, just before Ruben's second birthday, who helped me to accept and to understand that I was struggling with a maternal mental illness. But actually what led me, even myself, to that point of recognizing that I needed to trust another healthcare professional, because it hadn't gone that well the first couple of times, was reading mum's stories online. So I, at that stage, was on, those years ago, Mumsnet and Net Mums were quite the thing that you went on to for the advice and for what you should do. And you know the way when you're online and you click on one thing and you click on another, and suddenly you don't know how you've got down it, but you've kind of got down a rabbit warren of issues and topics. Well, that's where I ended up. I was lying in a sun lounger in Italy, and I, in between crying and wondering how on earth I was going to manage the future, I read the stories of other mums who shared their experiences, who said things that I thought I could never tell anybody else, who talked about what birth had been like for them, what postnatal experience had been like for them, who talked about their fears for the future. And suddenly it was like that light bulb moment for me, where just things began to click. And I thought, somebody else feels like this too. Somebody else has been here. Somebody else has those awful thoughts that I couldn't share with anybody else. And I suppose that gave me even more confidence to go and look about why. And the more I looked about why, the more the mums were also talking about help and support and getting better and recovery. And something just clicked in me, and I thought, I wonder if this is for me as well. And so from that, I talked to my husband and my mum. And as I say, we went back to a wonderful GP who I still see to this day, because to be honest, I struggle with my mental health and well-being day in, day out still. I'm not acutely mentally ill in the way I was, but it's definitely left its mark on me. And that GP was wonderful. I started on medication, I got mental health team support, and a couple of times a week I went to a unit here in East Belfast. And it took probably honestly took a good year for me to find my feet, to learn to accept myself, to learn to trust myself, to be able to see the light and the love that is all around me. But as I began to do that, I became really determined that I wanted just to reach out to another mum, whether that was a mum on my Facebook friends list or a friend of hers who might read something I wrote. And so I started to write my story. And the more I wrote, the more I heard, the more messages I got from mums themselves who were currently in that situation, from mums maybe who'd been there 5, 10, even 15 years ago, who were just delighted to hear somebody else talk, from grannies and aunties, etc., and healthcare professionals saying, I think we should talk about this a bit more. And really from that, and from being really convinced that there just wasn't enough out there about maternal mental health, not even maternal mental illness, but just genuinely maternal mental health, and how important it is for us all to look after ourselves. I really was determined that I somehow wanted to be part of a conversation and a movement that worked for change. And so my biggest focus for the last 5 years has been campaigning for specialist services, because that's what I personally really needed. I needed specialist services right from the midst of pregnancy. And I genuinely think had those been available, had I had psychiatric support and proper medication from that time, life would be very different for us. And so I'm really excited that we finally have funding from the Health Minister. So in January this year, he announced funding for these specialist services, and working alongside the PHA and other implementation teams, we are bringing those services to all of Northern Ireland in the next few months, which so hopefully that's a little bit of my journey, and I'm very happy to answer any questions as we go on.
Thank you, Lindsay. I just wanted to say firstly as well, thank you so much to everybody at Breastival for everything that you do, and also for having me here tonight. And also thank you to Lindsay for all of your tireless work that you have been doing. It's just amazing to be at where we are. Of course, you know, it would have been fantastic had it been done, you know, a long time ago. Then we would not be in this position, but it is amazing, all of that's going to help everybody else that's coming after us. So thank you so much. Well, I'm Andrea, and I'm a mum of 2 boys. My eldest is 4.5. So this is, I think, my 5th Breastival. So yes, I have been now breastfeeding constantly for that whole time. And then I have another little one who is almost 2. So my story is, it's kind of similar to Lindsay's, but different. And I think that's one of the things that I have noticed through the peer support that I do, is that we all kind of have different stories, but there's those little common threads. And that's what I think is most helpful, is, like Lindsay said, you know, picking up those things, those stories from other people, and making you feel, you know, you're not on your own, and it's not you that's broken. You know, this happens to lots of people, and just not feeling so lonely in whatever it is that you're going through. So I would say probably mine would have started in pregnancy as well. I would have always kind of had mental health struggles. I probably wouldn't have identified with having mental health struggles, but when I look back, I can see that I did. And I had sort of got myself to a good place, thought I was in a good place when I decided to have my first baby. And then during pregnancy, I just became more and more and more anxious, worried that something was going to go wrong, worried that there was something wrong with me, worried that there was something wrong with the baby, just worrying constantly. There was never a moment I was without worry. And I thought that it would all be okay once the baby was here. So I just kind of motored on, didn't even tell anybody that I was having these thoughts or feelings, because it was going to be okay once the baby was here. And then coming up towards the end of the pregnancy, I had in my head that the baby was breech, and I wasn't believed, because it was at that point where you're just having, you know, the midwife feels your tummy, and I kept saying, I think this baby's breech, I think this baby's breech. And you know, obviously in my head, I'm thinking this is one of those things that I'm just worrying about. There's nothing wrong. And turns out the baby was breech. So again, a C-section. And I'm terrified of even a needle. So you can imagine the thoughts of having a cesarean. So I didn't realise what happened to me probably until about a year after it happened. So when I went for the C-section, I shut down completely. I wasn't there for the C-section. I just had checked out. That was my coping mechanism. And so I had no memories of my first baby being born, and I still don't really. And that was a coping mechanism. And in a way, it was a useful one, because it kind of got me through what I needed to get through, but it didn't switch off. after the baby was born. So I was in that fight or flight, not really knowing what was going on. And that continued for about a year. And my baby also was tricky. He had lots of allergies. So it was a really, really stressful time. I wasn't well mentally, and I didn't really know that I wasn't well mentally. And my baby wasn't well, which added another layer of stress. So it was just a lot to deal with. And I wasn't dealing with it, but I wasn't asking for help either, because I was terrified that if I asked for help, they'd take my baby away. And that was a really real fear. And then I got to the point where I just thought, maybe it would be better if somebody else took him. And I was going down that spiral that Lindsay talked about, where I just didn't want to be here anymore. And I thought, maybe he would be better off without me. Maybe my husband would be better off without me, and just going down that dark spiral. And I still didn't tell anybody. And I still don't even think that I really acknowledged that there was anything wrong. I didn't think that I had a mental illness. I thought that I was just a rubbish mummy, a rubbish person. So I didn't know to ask for help, or I was too frightened to ask for help. And actually the turning point for me was a breastfeeding group. So I was so lucky to have a wonderful mummy live 2 doors up with a baby a similar age. And she had invited me to go to a breastfeeding group. And it was through the walk to that breastfeeding group that I began to chat to the other mums. There were a few of us lived close to each other, and we walked together and we started to share our stories. And it was through that I realised that I had had a traumatic birth. And up until that point, I didn't realise that. I just thought, it was a straightforward cesarean. People have them all the time. Why would that be traumatic? But it was how I responded to that. And that's what I've come to learn through all of my training with peer supporting, that, anything can be traumatic. It's your perception of it, and what might be traumatic for one person might be an absolute breeze for somebody else. So it's your experience of it. So chatting with those other mums who had been through traumas themselves, or had difficult births, or, had mental illness, they pointed me in the right direction. So I ended up going to Birth Afterthoughts, and having some counselling through that. And that was the start that kick-started me off in my recovery. And then I went for private counselling with an amazing counsellor who dealt with all of the emotions that I was going through at that time, but also went further back and dealt with all of those underlying things. So that was really like transformational for me. And I think that was a massive turning point, not only in my perinatal mental health, but like just my whole mental health, my whole journey from childhood right up until now. So then came the thoughts about, should we have another baby? And I was so scared that the same thing would happen again, that I put it off and I put it off. But I really wanted to have another one. I wanted to have a sibling, and I went to the Positive Birth Conference, and that inspired me, because I thought birth could be positive. That was mind-blowing for me. Like, how could birth, which was such an awful experience for me and really broke me, how could that be positive? But hearing all of those other women's stories again inspired me. And I then heard about Birthwise. So I got in touch with Birthwise. I think the minute I peed on the stick, I was on the phone saying, right, I really didn't cope well with my last pregnancy. I didn't cope well afterwards. That's not happening again. So I had everything in place when I was having my second baby, nearly to the point of I was asking for help, like before I needed it, and just saying, I'm too scared for this to happen. I don't want this to happen. So I had amazing support in place when I had my second baby. And actually, he was a cesarean as well. I had planned a home birth. It didn't go to plan. Baby had other ideas, and I had a cesarean again. But this time it was actually a positive experience. So my first planned cesarean was totally traumatic. My second emergency, and it really was an emergency at that point, cesarean, was a wonderful experience because I felt in control. And that's due to the support that I had through Birthwise. And then after that, then I felt so passionate about the help that I had received. I wanted to be that help. So I went, I saw the training advertised with, it was at the time We Are Pangs, it's now the Parent Rooms, to train to be a peer supporter. So I did that when my baby, I think he was about 8 weeks old, whenever I started to do that training. and I completed the training the day that the first lockdown started. So I have been supporting other parents through the whole pandemic. Since July, we have been having our online support sessions with the parent rooms. So it couldn't have happened at a better time for me and also for those other parents. Because I think that has kept me going as well, because there has obviously been a complete roller coaster this last year and a half. So it's been really good for me, and also I've been delighted to be able to support the other parents. And then so I have now my toolkit, and that's part of the service that we offer with the parent rooms, is we do a RAP plan, which is a wellness recovery action plan, and within that we have all of the tools to keep ourselves well. And one of my tools is meditation. That's really been helpful for me, and I've now set up my own business teaching meditation and journaling too. It is usually mums. It's not exclusively for mums, but it is usually for mums, and that's who always wants to do it. So that's kind of my journey of where I have been and how I felt so inspired by the support that I have received from my peers, that I now am a peer supporter and support other mums. So I hope that inspires other people.
Hello. Your stories are lovely, Andrea and Lindsay. So hopefully mine can live up to yours. I'm Louise Taylor, and thank you to Nuala and the rest of the Breastival girls for inviting me along this evening. I'm not amazing at words, so I hope I can get myself or come across well. I am the owner of Little Forget Me Nots and the founder of a newly established charity, the Little Forget Me Nots Trust. I found a different version of myself a few years ago after I lost my firstborn son. I had my little girl Chloe 7 years ago, and that was a normal pregnancy. First pregnancy was just, everybody was up to high-do, and I thought the worst of everything, and I was only strictly drinking 1 cup of tea a good day, doing all of the overreacting that you do because you don't know what your body's going through. And yeah, perfect. She came 4 weeks early, but like it was okay. Like I think I had this, and we established breastfeeding pretty quickly. And I was sent on my other chat yesterday that the midwives thought that I was a pro breastfeeder, and I was like, no, I haven't a clue. So that was all okay. Chloe was great. Me and my husband actually got married on her first birthday. So like I had things under control. I was like, I'm doing this life, this is great. So we got married and we planned our mini moon. So we went to London, and yeah, we had our wee mini moon baby, and we're all excited. It was all amazing. And then we had our actual our honeymoon over in Las Vegas, but when I was pregnant, and nobody knew, and I was sick as a dog, but oh well, I was slaying pregnancy. It was all okay. And then months went on, weeks went on, and I started to feel that there was something wrong with the pregnancy, and everybody I spoke to was telling me that my head was away, but I was like, no, there's definitely something wrong. Like I knew that I was more relaxed because it was my second pregnancy. And I was allowing myself another cup of tea a day, and I was lifting a wee bit more, or doing things that I wasn't doing in my first pregnancy. So I was like over-analysing what I had done on this pregnancy had changed. Again, I was just going about my business and telling people, like my mum, my husband, my friends, my work colleagues, I really think there's something wrong with my baby. And everybody, like, peer pressure, I believe, is such a great thing, but then also it isn't when you do not need to hear it. So I really needed somebody to take my hand and go, Louise, it's okay to go over to the hospital. So anyway, I went on, and I knew my baby had died. And I started grieving. I just turned off. I had a wee girl that I was raising, but I didn't know who I was. I was just a person that had nothing. I couldn't care for my baby. I wasn't a wife. I was in the middle of a renovation. So I was actually living at my mum and dad's house with my family. So, and my mum was like talking to me and I just couldn't hear her. I was going to work every day and I just wasn't doing my work. I just sat like, I just wasn't a person. And then one day I just went, right, I'm phoning up. And that was probably about 2 weeks later. And I was already grieving. I was already in the stages of grief. I knew my baby had passed away. So I phoned up the hospital and I couldn't talk. And the wee midwife went, come straight over. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh yeah, somebody's actually listening to me. I'm sorry, I'm getting, okay. So I went over and she had said, come on, but they just know when your baby has died. So anyway, fast forward on, it was confirmed that my baby had passed away. And then my milk came in and I was like, oh my goodness, nobody had told me that this was ever going to happen, that your milk comes in. So that was after a really successful breastfeeding journey, then your milk coming in and your head was just, you didn't have a baby to feed and you had this milk. So I decided I was going to donate it. I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to donate it. But because I didn't have a baby there, it's hard to keep establishing your milk. So anyway, I spoke to the ladies at the milk bank and they're absolutely amazing, just encouraging, but we understood that this wasn't going to be a journey for us. So I was at the pits, just felt useless as a wife. I had a house that wasn't renovating. My husband was struggling too, and we were like, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to build ourselves up? So one of the wee midwives had said to me, Louise, we're going to see you back here very, very soon. You are going to just come in and you're going to have another successful pregnancy. And that was in my head, but obviously at that time I was like, I don't want another baby. All I want is that baby. His name is Reuben, by the way. So when Lindsay had said Reuben, I was just like, oh my goodness. So anyway, so I was like, oh my goodness. So after I had kind of got over the initial shock, the initial stages of grief, I was like, I need to have another baby. I need to have this other baby in my life because my heart is breaking for a baby. I need something. I know I had already a baby, but she was a tearaway and I just needed that wee tiny baby. So I did fall pregnant pretty quickly after. It was about 8 weeks after I had given birth. And I was a mess. I just sat like, I was empty inside. I couldn't even connect that I was pregnant. My wee boy, thankfully the pregnancy was okay. I was consultant led. I was up to high dose. My blood pressure was just through the roof. I was able to get induced a bit earlier because I was just freaking out. So Lyndon came along into the world. He's healthy, happy, amazing. He keeps me on my toes and he is definitely the biggest rainbow baby ever. I have went on to have another baby, Jude, he's 1.5, and all of them have been breastfeeding, but it's okay having another baby, but you're still grieving for this. I still grieve this day. This 5 years ago. And I was like, how am I ever going to be the normal same Louise that I was? I was really fun loving. I was like up for the party. I was the conversation person in the room, but I just wasn't that person at all. And I actually was afraid to speak to people and start a conversation. And everybody just ignored the fact that I had lost a baby. It was just surreal. I was like, this is just an alien world to me right now. So I had started counselling and I was dreading it. Every time I had booked in for counselling, I just shut off. It was like I was in a different world. I was like, I can't do this. And I had went a couple of times and ended up talking to the counsellor about her life. And I was like, this isn't normal counselling. I'm not opening up. I'm not availing of this counselling the way that I should. So I was in work, and I can remember speaking to a guy that I work with. I generally, in my my real job, I call it because I love this job. So my real job, that's a wee bit more stressful. I was standing, and it was as if my body was just there, and I was like looking over myself. And a guy, he was a crafter, he was a woodworker, and that's what he did. He made his money by traditional skills. He came over to me and he said, "Louise, you need to find a craft. You will not regret using your hands." And I was like, okay, I didn't hear what he was saying to me at first, but I went home and I said to my husband, who is a fixer-upper, who is amazing, he just turns his hand to everything, and he spent a lot of his time after we had lost everyone in the garage just tinkering away at something. We had our house renovation, so he was getting stuck in using his hands. And then it actually just dawned on me. I said, I really need to pick up knitting or sewing or something. So with my work, we were actually quite fortunate that we had National Lottery funding, and I did a 6 weeks sewing class to for bereaved parents to make little gowns for them, and I learned so much as an individual trying to support another person. Just mums coming together and just having a craft to work at, and if the conversation came up about their little one, it was a natural conversation. It wasn't a forced, like at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, the 4th year, come and sit and talk about your grief. You know, it was we're doing this. This is a project. We're going to do this, and we're going to talk. If the conversation comes up, amazing. So I was like clicking, going, this is how I'm going to heal my mind. And then there was one Sunday, for some reason I turned on the TV. There was a channel, like a QVC channel, and it was, we're in Belfast, come to Belfast and look at all this embroidery stuff. I was like, okay, never been in my life to these places. And I just went down and picked up an embroidery machine, and I learned, I set it in my workshop. I renovated my workshop into my woman's shed. And I just learned and was so happy coming out after I put my kids to bed, getting stuck in and doing a project. And then that led on to people coming around saying, can you pop my name or my kid's name or somebody's name on this. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I had to say to my husband, I'm working full time, I'm doing this. Should I be making a business out of this? So the more that I was getting introduced to people and sharing my story on Instagram, then a lot more mummies, brave parents had come around and been sharing their story. And they were like, Louise, I would love to do something like this. How do you do this? So then I was getting a wee bits and bobs, like cotton embroidery hoops and sewing, like thread and needles. And I was like, I need to help these people some way, another way. So then, because my mum had founded a charity 30 years ago, I was starting to pick her head, saying, Mum, how can I help these people that are coming around? Obviously, they want an outlet somewhere. And she was like, well, Louise, why don't you establish a charity? Like, establish it, see, does it grow legs? Start seeing if this is needed. So then, because I come from a kind of community development background, I started to just research, started to document, started to think to myself, right, this girl has went and she has told me that she's starting to become lighter, talking is easier to her husband and things like this. So I said, right, so then the pandemic, so this has been happening over the last 5 years. It isn't just to wake up in the morning and say, right, I'm now a charity. So the pandemic kind of started, and it did start. It didn't kind of start as here. We all know that the pandemic's here. There was actually there was a local person that had become a bereaved parent, and she said that she didn't know where she would have been if she didn't have seen me come out the other way. Now, she was very early on, she was like, oh goodness. And I said, Mummy, this is it. This is my sign that I need to become a charity, to try and look for different ways to offer alternative services. Counselling is amazing, and I have friends that went for counselling, but it isn't for everybody. So I have been trying to establish a way that I can support a bereaved parent and a bereaved family through art therapy sessions. So I established that at the beginning of the pandemic, and only a couple of weeks ago we have just been given charity status, which is amazing. So that means that we can start putting projects together. We had ran a pilot project at the start of this year and supported 10 brave families, and the feedback that we have got has been unreal. I come from a rural background, and there's loads of you're not allowed to do this, you fall outside of that. I really don't want my charity to be like this. I just want to help a brave parent. Our limit is a preteen child loss. So I know of child loss affects everybody in the family, and we don't know whatever ways your family's been is set up. And we've helped a mum and then her mum, and they came together online and they did craft workshops, which was just so lovely to see. It was their time to connect together and to share with us that, hopefully one day it will be in person, but it was just so lovely to see women just coming together. So my journey has been just a snowball from me losing my wee man, but I just think that when I'm saying the little forget me nots, that's what this is. I'm trying to not forget him, and this, I can't care for him, so this is kind of like my physical baby that I am just nurturing. And then I love this work. I love embroidery, and I've established a business out of it too. So I'm kind of running a business and a charity. A new charity. It's not all brilliant at the minute, but we're just finding our way to establish services and things. So yeah, I hope that's a good overview.
Thanks, Louise and Andrea and Lindsay, for sharing such really important and powerful stories that we all need to hear and speak about. I think each and every one of you are incredibly brave, both in respect to what you went through personally, but also in all of the things that you have changed, because each one of you individually has led important change that has assisted, other women in similar situations. And it's an extreme privilege to share this particular space with you. So I just want to take a second just to say thank you so much for joining us and for speaking so beautifully and so clearly. And, I'm really personally moved by each and every one of your stories. We're now going to, I'm really, really keen that we hear from the women and men who are on this call, and that we have a chance to kind of talk through some of the feedback. So I'm just going to start to invite some of the people that have left comments in the chat. Now, not everyone has a question, but they have something to say. So I'm just going to go through the comments as they have been posted, and I will ask you to unmute if you would like to say your comment or add a question. As I said before, if you're not comfortable in doing that, just stay silent and I will read out the comment from the chat. So the first person that I have a comment from is Sarah Kidson. Sarah, if you are still on the call, would you like to unmute and tell the panel your thoughts?
Hi, it's Sarah. I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you really to each of you for sharing your experiences. I'm fortunate in so much as I've not personally been impacted by kind of mental health issues related to pregnancy, birth, or anything to do with that. But I've got close family members and friends that have been, and I'm a breastfeeding counsellor and IBCLC. So to me, it's really important to be able to, continue gaining insight to some women and what they have been through, and hopefully to help better position me to help support me in the capacity that I may interact with other people as well. So really just a heartfelt thank you to each of you, and, for all you have done and are doing to help support other people too.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate your comment. Would anyone from any one of the panel like to say anything at this point? You're all okay. And just to say to anyone in the call, obviously we're talking about very emotional experiences and issues that could impact on all of us. So if anyone here would like a chat outside of this, or would like to access support, there are links to support in the chat. You can reach out to me as well. I'm a disability tutor specialising in mental health support. So if I can't assist you personally or point you in the right direction, I'll be able to point you in the right direction to someone who can. And there are other people within Breastival and on the board and on the call who will be in a position to help you as well. So just do reach out if you need anything from us. So the next person that I have a comment from on the chat is Laura. Laura, would you like to unmute and share your thoughts with the panel? So Laura has stayed on mute, so I'm just going to read this. I'm going to read the statement out. So Laura has said, Lindsay, you're amazing. How wonderful that you're able to turn your experience into helping so many other families. And then another comment for Andrea, such a moving, inspiring story. Andrea, thank you for sharing. Louise, I haven't caught up with the comments to know if there's an addition to that for yourself, but I'll find it later on. Now, I believe Catherine has just indicated that she would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Catherine, would you like to unmute and share?
Yeah, here again, thank you all so much for today. Something that kind of came up for me when I listened to all of you was the fact of so many times in your experience that you weren't listened to, or people weren't listening to you. What do you think we need to be saying to the people that should be listening to us before we get to the stage of saying this is too far? What do we need to be saying to our healthcare providers to say this is something that I'm really feeling?
One of the things I think that there's been a lot of work around is trying to help healthcare professionals and those who work in any way supporting mums, is that every contact and every connection with mum counts. So at every opportunity to be asking the question and really thinking about how you do that, asking the mum how she is, how she really is, and how she's getting on, and remembering in that contact, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 50 minutes, that actually, even if you have seen 6 other people that morning and you're going to see 6 other people in the afternoon, for that one mum in front of you, this is her opportunity, and it might be the opportunity that she has to share something with you or to ask for help and support. And I realize that it can feel like it puts a huge burden on healthcare professionals. So that's not what that's meant to do, but I suppose it is setting the scene for that really important communication that can happen, and encouraging healthcare professionals and mums as well to see those connections with their healthcare professionals as important for them as it is for the baby that they're growing at that time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do any other panelists like to add anything?
I was just going to say, and it kind of sort of linked in with what Sarah had said as well about professionals. So the parent rooms do offer training for professionals as well. So if anybody is in that category and they want to, do training specifically for perinatal mental health, you can contact the parent rooms and find out more about that. But then from my own point of view, and I think it actually answers one of the questions in the chat as well. What I had done was I made sure that all of the people involved with me were aware of what I had been through before, and that shouldn't fall to the pregnant person. But I had gone to my GP, had gone to my midwife, had gone to my health visitor, all of those people, and been involved with Birthwise and different Facebook groups and things like that, and said, basically keep an eye out for me. Will you make sure I'm okay? And that seems ludicrous that I should have had to ask for that, because that should be what is happening automatically. Prevention is better than cure. So just all of those health professionals, as Lindsay said, keeping an eye out for that and just making sure to check all the time. And somebody gave me the piece of advice: always ask twice. If you say to somebody, how are you? And they say, okay, I'm okay, like we all do, and then ask again, but how are you really? you know, give them that opportunity to actually say, well, I'm not really okay, because it's nearly an instinctual thing. If somebody says, how are you? We just go, okay, I'm okay, even if you're really not okay. So yeah, just keep checking in with mums, I suppose.
Thanks, Andrea. Louise, would you like to join?
Well, I have learned the hard way, and I know now when I'm going into a GP appointment, or if I am offloading something, I just say, look, I'm being serious here. I need you to react. I've had my babies, my babies after that pregnancy, I have went into my consultant or my scans and says, I don't feel like this is normal. I need you to support me in another way. And I have been listened to when I'm direct. It's not that this is a whim that I'm coming in and going, oh, I don't really feel. I'm adamant that there is something wrong and I need that. But it's taught me, I think probably parenthood, growing up, pregnancy has taught me, and then losing a wee baby has taught me to just grow up really, and to just give, I don't know, it's like you just have to grow as a person really, and understand that what your weaknesses, and then just reach out. But I know a lot of women do struggle, even first time, like my friends, they're really a couple has been first time mums, and they're afraid to talk to their GP, or they're afraid to talk to their health professions, which I always say, if you have something wrong, please share it.
Thank you. I think that's a really powerful message from all three of you about the importance of finding space to speak out about mental health challenges, but also having that sense of care for those who are around you, and creating spaces to listen and to hear and to help others, and finding finding a way to assist people to access services. And I think it's really needed in our society where we don't, there are more and more spaces happening informally where people are talking about mental health challenges. But we do remain in a situation where we're challenging, where it is challenging to access statutory provision and to find the right provision for the right kinds of people, because sometimes what is available may not match the person's needs. So all of these issues are really important to discuss. I'm just going to go back to the chat line just to see, because I know people have raised comments, and as we're talking through, people may find that they are, stimulated to add a question to their comments. So I'd just like to continue to work through. So I have a comment from Holly Carroll. Holly, if you're still on the call, would you like to share your comment or ask a question? So just bear in mind, there's no pressure. We can all be comfortable in the silence as we wait until I read it out, I read the comment out. So Holly has said, and it is kind of the theme of tonight, thank you for your honesty, ladies, and we all thank you for that, Andrea. Holly did have a specific question about the support that you had second time round. You have mentioned that you feel you've answered that. I just want to check in just to see that you've nothing to add or raise.
Yeah, so as I said, I kind of spoke to all the health professionals that I was involved with. But I think Birthwise was really, really helpful in that they sort of empowered me to advocate for myself, like we've just said. So I felt in total control, because my trauma with the first birth came from me feeling totally out of control. So I advocated for myself, and I also had a doula, which I was very fortunate to be able to have, and she supported me through that as well. So I made sure that I was in control of everything, and that's what I said, like I was even in control of the emergency C-section, which sounds bizarre, but I had planned for every eventuality. So I knew that, you know, choice A was home birth, choice B was, you know, in the home from home, choice C was labour ward. And, you know, the very last thing I wanted to happen was a C-section, but I planned for it so that I would feel in control, so that even no matter what the circumstances happened, my wishes would be respected. So I think that that really made a big difference to me coming out sort of unscathed, as it were, and then just having that support in place. So even though I came out of it much better, I still did have a wobble afterwards. So I had already informed everybody. And I think just like being really open and honest the second time, because I realized the first time that that's where, no, it wasn't a mistake, but that's where I could have helped myself more, was that feeling of not being able to tell anybody. The second time round, I told everybody everything. Like I literally would have told the postman if I was feeling down. I just thought, no, I am going to ask for help and get the help. So I think not being afraid to tell somebody. So as soon as I felt I was taking that dip, I told my midwife, and I got help very, very quickly the second time around, and I recovered much more quickly from that.
Thank you, Andrea. Would any of the other panelists like to comment at this point or add anything to what Andrea has said? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next comment in the chat, which is from Claire Flynn. So Claire, if you're on the call and would like to make your comment directly to the panel or add a question, you could unmute now. So again, we're just being comfortable in the silence. Yeah, there's Claire's unmuted, so go on ahead, Claire.
I'm not too sure which question you might be referring to, but I just came across that, you know, the resilience that was being built from first baby to second baby or subsequent babies, and how, you know, the challenges then for first time mums with knowing how the system works. So it's just that thought that the challenge is there for first time mums.
That's a really important point, Claire. Would anyone like to address that from the panel? Lindsay, I think you touched on some of that in your comments, but we can move on, or you might want to add something.
I don't know that I have an awful lot to add. I think what Claire said is really important. I think probably one of the things that I find is really key is helping not just to educate healthcare professionals, but just help educate mums in general about why our mental health and well-being matters. So not particularly what it means to have mental illness, but just what is your mental health and well-being, and how to look after it, and why to look after it, and where to look after it, and just so that it helps again to break some of that stigma and the silence that can sometimes surround it as well. So the more all of us talk about our mental health and well-being in the same way we talk about maybe feeling sick in pregnancy or having swollen hands or swollen feet, actually we just talk to each other about our mental health and well-being. I think particularly for first-time mums, that helps to break some of that real unknown that can be around particularly mental health and well-being. It helps to break that silence, that stigma, that feeling of shame or blame. And so I think Claire's absolutely right in what she says there and the question she's asked. So thank you, Claire, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Lindsay. So the next comment is from Ruth Young. Ruth, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, I was just really encouraged by all the ladies' stories. It wasn't my story at all, but it was just really uplifting for me to hear that. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your experience, for helping us all to have a better understanding of the issues around this as well, and how we can support each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth. I also have a comment from Aisling Busby. Aisling, would you like to join the conversation? So Aisling may be choosing to stay on mute, so I will read out Aisling's comments, because I think it is important for us all to hear the positive messages that are emerging and coming through from this space. So Aisling has said, "Thank you, ladies, for sharing your stories and thoughts so honestly and openly. It's good to hear other mums' experiences and about the positivity that can come from recovery and growth. So thank you for that." Jennifer, I have a comment from you. Would you like to unmute and share it with the panel?
Yeah, hi everybody. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing such powerful and honest stories. And I think that something that this panel has really highlighted is the fact that perinatal mental health isn't just postnatal depression. And I think that's something that people kind of think about quite a lot when they talk about perinatal mental health. We talk about postnatal depression, but actually it encompasses a much wider range of experiences, from trauma, grief, loss, anxiety, rage occasionally, the range of experiences that women have. And I think it's so important that you've all highlighted, such different experiences, but as Andrea said, common threads within that, of listening to yourself, acknowledging when something isn't feeling right, and actually the power of someone actually taking you seriously and listening to you when you do ask for help, and acknowledge that things aren't okay, and the power of reaching out for help. So thanks everyone for sharing. It's been excellent.
And thank you, Jennifer. Would anyone on the panel like to respond to some of the points that Jennifer has made? Yeah.
I think that's so important, Jennifer, because one of the things that, particularly around the campaigning that we've been doing, is to try and get away from using the phrase postnatal depression as a catch-all term, because it really doesn't catch all. Of course, some mums struggle with postnatal depression, some also struggle with antenatal depression, many more struggle with anxiety or birth trauma or grief or loss. And actually, the real problem with just using the term postnatal depression is often it doesn't allow mums to identify themselves whenever they're struggling. So if all you ever hear about is postnatal depression, but you're not, as you would say, maybe you think depression is somebody being very sad or weepy, but you're not that, you're highly anxious, you're functioning in a really high capacity, but life is crumbling around you, then it can be really hard for you even to accept yourself that you might even need to take the step to ask for help. So while it's definitely an important part of maternal mental health or maternal mental health, you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we use terms that allow all mums to be able to identify with and therefore get the help and support that they need.
Thank you, Lindsay, much appreciated. So I also have a comment from Nikita. Nikita, would you like to unmute and contribute to the discussion?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well. I think what you've all demonstrated is how much strength you actually had even when you were going through your lowest moments. And I think that's really incredible. And I think that's something that women are particularly amazing in, that even when they're going through really tough times, they're able to pull through in that way for both themselves and their families. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you, and I've just found it all very, very interesting. And that's all I wanted to say, really.
Thank you, Nikita, and thanks for joining the conversation. I just have a final point just to raise from Holly, which just is for Andrea, saying that's really good advice about knowing what you want for a C-section in the event that you need one, and possibly really good information to share with mothers-to-be.
Yeah, I think, and this kind of comes back to the first time mum thing. For me, as a first time mum, I was very much I'll just go with the flow sort of thing, which you hear so many times, and people said, as if it's a good thing. But for me, I think that's where the issue came, was me going with the flow actually meant me not making any choices about what happened, which was why I felt so out of control. So the second time round, I was going to go with the flow, but it was going to be my flow. So I think that was a massive help to me to kind of decide what I did and didn't want ahead of time for all eventualities. That was really, really empowering for me. So I would definitely, and I do, if I know anybody pregnant, I'll say to them, think about all of your options, think about what you do want, what you don't want. And then, it's not that you're having to make a decision in an emergency situation where you can't really, your head's not in it if something's, thrown at you and you've like 2 seconds to decide what to do. So thinking about it ahead of time, definitely.
Thanks, Andrea. We're just coming up to the end of the call, and I've went through, the majority of the comments. And I just wanted to ask you, each of you just one thing before we finish, which is just from what you know now and everything that has been said tonight, could you maybe just make a closing point of what you would say to anyone on the call or out there who may be experiencing mental health challenges at this time or know someone that is? Lindsay, is it okay to start with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. I think probably what the theme really has been through all of tonight is the importance of getting the support that's right for you. So the right support at the right time in the right place. And, you know, if you ask for help and support from somebody and either they don't take you seriously or they don't offer you the right help and support, it's okay to ask to see somebody else. And I mean that if you say to a GP and you don't get the support that you want, or a health visitor or a midwife, you are allowed to ask again to see somebody else and have yourself heard. So don't be afraid of that. I definitely wish I had known that. So I suppose it is just about the theme that this evening really has been about just how important each of us are in ourselves, how important our mental health and well-being is. And just really, I think all of us would say, if you're struggling, please don't do so alone. There are people there to help you. And if you don't get the help in the first instance, please don't be afraid to ask again or get somebody else to ask on your behalf if you're not in the place to do that for yourself.
Thank you, Lindsay. Andrea, would you like to share?
Yeah, I think just talking about it, just tell somebody, find somebody, you know, that you do feel comfortable with, whether that's somebody you know or whether it's, you know, a stranger. Obviously you can get in touch with the parent rooms, and we have our peer support groups, and it's just a group of mums, all, you know, I hate that phrase, in the same boat, because everything's different, but you know, people who will understand, people who get where you're coming from, and you won't be looked at, you know, strangely, or you know, think there's something wrong with you, because we've all been there, and we totally understand it. So just find somebody to talk to, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you don't know, but just tell somebody. Yeah, I just think just speak to someone.
Thank you, Andrea. Louise, can we hear from you now?
Yeah, well, I would like to just highlight 2 points. One is listen. If a mummy or a person or just asks for help, listen. That in itself is a gift, and I have learned to listen over my motherhood journey. Also, suppressing your feelings can only go for so long, and recognizing that there is help. I know it is quite hard, especially in Northern Ireland. You don't know who's being funded or where's being funded or where you can go. But I have spoke to women in their 60s who lost babies in their 20s, and following my business, and then actually realizing, oh goodness, she's quite vocal about her loss and things. They're actually saying, you are unraveling something that I've never dealt with, and it's coming out in positive ways. They've been able to, like, just a lady had said that she was unable just to be alone, because she was afraid of herself and her own thoughts, and she was able to be alone for the first time in years. So it's just like, there's only recognizing that you need help, and you can only suppress it for so long. So just try, ask your GP, and don't stop asking. So yeah, and thank you so much for having me this evening. Yeah, I hope I have helped somebody. Yeah, that's enough for me.
Thank you. And just to say, I think each and every one of you are helping people every day with your stories and your work, and we're all the more better off just to have you with us this evening and to know that you're out there helping others. And it's such, you know, that's such a powerful, I can't even think of the right word, but you're all very powerful people to help others. And tonight, to be here and to listen and to share, I have just found really, you know, really amazing, and I'm really moved by your stories. And just before we go, I just wanted to add something just to point out. It's just a little comment about how a point of privilege and it may help people who who may be in a position where they need to access kind of prenatal support. So sometimes, you know, you can have a point of privilege where you maybe know a bit more about what's happening in services, or you have access to people or access to more information. So from working within mental health with students at Queen's, I had a really broad overview of everything that was available within the region. And when having, you know, when I was having Russia in 2016, I had a lot of anxiety, and because following like a previous negative experience, and I had a lot of anxiety, and I knew going in and out of the hospital that I wasn't getting, you know, the excited, happy feelings from attending scans and all of that. And there were issues that we had to deal with through the pregnancy, and I just kept saying every time I went to the hospital, I know there is support and I would like to access it. You know, I would like to prepare for my baby coming, and I would like to talk about why I'm kind of feeling this way. And after saying it so many times, I actually got access to 3 sessions before Rasha was born within the hospital that gave me time to work through any issues and to talk it out. And that really benefited me, because by the time you know, the time birth came along, I had that space to kind of work through some of the issues of why I was feeling that way. And I just wanted to let people know, and it reinforces the points on the call, that if you do feel something, share it. And you know, and there is that power in knowledge. And I almost have a sense of discomfort that other women haven't had the access to that experience, and it does make me feel kind of sad, you know, that it is there and it isn't easily accessed for whatever reason. But hopefully tonight's conversation will, you know, will mark a step for change. So thanks again to each and every one of you for opening up our eyes and our ears and really driving forward this particular conversation. And just before we go, I just want to ask finally if there's anyone who would like to make a final point before we end the call. Okay. Well, all remains to be said is thank you so much. Throughout this call, Catherine, I believe, has been sharing sources of support and information about all of the wonderful organisations in the region that can help women who are experiencing mental health challenges, or people who are facing mental health challenges, just to be a bit more clear about that, particularly in the context of children and childbirth and parenting. If you do need any help, just remember you can reach out to us, and we will do our best to point you in the right direction, or listen to you and try and find a path forward. And just on that note, I'd just like to say thank you all and good night, and let's all take care of each other. Thank you.